Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's Caroline Stevens. It's Seeking the Truth time. I'm hoping that I'm going live on Facebook, though it has just indicated a low connectivity rate. And we're now recording on Skype. So I've got the greatest pleasure in introducing you all to a new connection. And this is Jonathan. Jonathan is involved with neuro-linguistic programming. He is, was it a psychotherapist, Jonathan? Or
that's a term some might use. The truth is, they're just labels at the end of the day.
Yeah. So who are you, Jonathan?
All things connected to psychological, emotional manipulation, with positive intent, I must add. But the techniques, whether you call them hypnotherapy, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, psychotherapy, certain techniques used in counter, it doesn't matter. There's so many different names and apparently different techniques, but at the root, they all work for the same reasons. And they all effectively are ways of manipulating people emotionally, psychologically, and a combination of the two to get an end result. And with therapy,
Jonathan, we are meeting each other on a dark, wet November afternoon. I assume it's dark and wet where you are because it normally is dark and wet in the Northwest, isn't it? And you are Jonathan Royle, and you are connected with Darren Brown, I understand.
No, you see, connected, it's where people throw around. My name's been connected in the past, but no, to put that in position, I've got tons of training DVDs and videos out there, books and various stuff on the internet, and a large amount, practically everything I've ever released, has been purchased in the past by a company called Objective Television Productions, who, amongst their programs, made the vast majority of Darren Brown's television output. So yeah, it's true to say that they bought pretty much everything I've ever released, and it's true to say that some of the stuff that's in the DVDs I have out there has actually been used word for word and action for action in programs that Objective Productions have made, including the odd bit that has been used in programs that were made, but also made with Darren Brown.
So it's a tenuous link then, I guess.
Well, it's not that tenuous in so much as the stuff they've actually used. The key to it is that they, in terms of hypnosis, and put that on the record, Darren uses hypnosis a lot more than he would ever publicly admit, I think, would be fair to say. In regards to hypnosis content that's been used, behind the scenes, my stuff gets used by famous name life coaches, stage hypnotists, mind readers, mentalists, call them what you will, all over the world. So yeah, I do consult with lots of people that you won't have heard of in England, but in America are famous, and vice versa. And again, although that's for the entertainment field, the underlying techniques come down to psychological and emotional manipulation. All human beings have certain things that when their buttons are pressed, you will get certain reactions. And those reactions...
That's a trigger word.
It can be trigger words if people have been, what's called conditioned. And in terms of conditioning, the most famous example of that's generally known is Pavlov and his dogs, and the ringing of the bell, and then the dogs end up salivating just at the ring of a bell without the appearance of any food. What people aren't as obviously aware of is that with Pavlov's dog, yes, that did happen. Rang the bell, they got used to seeing the food, salivated after a while when they heard the bell. They salivated even when there was no food there. What most people don't know unless they've studied it further is that there is a threshold point of that. If you continue ringing the bell time and time again without the appearance of food, there will become a breaking point where the conditioning, the anchor, the trigger that was there will break down, so that the dogs will get to a point where they go, hang on, too many times I've heard a bell and there's been no food, and they will actually undo the conditioning and it will stop working.
Now, that's a really interesting point, and I'm going to interrupt you there because you are talking. I've never interviewed anybody like yourself before, and you know, my brain is going whoa, because I'm now thinking of how that can be applied in the political field.
It is widely, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, as you know, off air, we were talking about, I was involved with the referendum campaign. In fact, my target, my label even on my business card was campaign and training manager. So for the nation. So that's no mean achievement. And to have to fit that into a 5-day week, well, it was basically, it was a 7-day a week job for 11 months. So you become, it's all consuming. It's sort of, you know, if you're not passionate about it, I don't see how you can do a job 7 days a week if you're not passionate about wanting to dump the European Union. Lots of sacrifices had to be made. So you just said that ringing the bell triggers the salivation, etc. So when they call a general election, you get all these people saying, right, we're going to get our candidate in. And we have had, let me think, we had a general election in 2015, we had a general election in 2017, and we're now having a general election in 2019. We, under the Lisbon Treaty, are unlikely to have any more general elections in the conventional sense after 2022. In fact, because we had one in 2017, that would have neatly taken us up to the 22 mark.
Yeah.
So we've had 3 general elections in a very short space of time. When are the population actually going to undo this salivation bit that we've been talking about? Is it not taking 3 general elections in such a short space of time to undo this?
Unfortunately, probably for the majority of the mass populace, it may, and I hate to sound really negative, but you know, I call it more realistic. For the majority who haven't already started to kind of wake up and widen their horizons, it's probably too late, because this has been engineered. It's my opinion and belief that this has all been engineered this way purposely, in line with something that the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations, that apparently just research ways to market things better and all that. Well, actually, when you dig deeper, the Tavistock Institute is the modern day offshoot of what was the Tavistock Hospital, which was an offshoot of a thing called MK Ultra, Mind Control Ultra, a program that was run by the CIA shortly after the war, once they'd brought in the likes of Joseph Mengele and other Nazis and smuggled them from Germany, who'd done the most atrocious experiments there. They smuggled them in to America to be part of MK Ultra to study the effects of fear, trauma, and related techniques of hypnosis and use of drugs and the combination thereof into getting people to do literally whatever they wanted. And I mean, to the extent of creating mind-controlled assassins, such as the Mancunian candidate and Saran.
Are we talking about after World War II then?
Yeah.
So that's when the MK Ultra was introduced. And who funded the Tavistock Institute? Was that also by the Americans as well? And this comes under the Illuminati Talmudic system.
Who funded it? I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, lots of these things that they use shell companies in modern days to make it look like they're funded by different people, and then to try and avoid the fact that they get funding from parties they're not supposed to. For example, they will use shield companies who've donated money to them, who've then donated. So it makes it harder for the general man on the street to trace. And unfortunately, a lot of modern day journalists I mean, there's freelance journalists out there that are trying to do an amazing job now with alternative media and the internet and stuff. But in terms of the mainstream media, your Murdoch-owned publications around the world and television and radio stations and your Dacry owned stuff and whatnot, you know, the majority of the world's mainstream media, 95, 96% of it's owned by about 4 or 5 people.
It's all linked to the Rothschilds for sure. I think I read somewhere that it was six media outlets, and they all directly or indirectly to the Rothschilds. And then, of course, you've got the alternative media, who also act as controlled opposition too.
There's alternative media that are purposely bought there by the mainstream media. Of course, there is, because that is part of the manipulation. Yeah. But that's part of the manipulation process. You don't need to be as kind of pigeonholey as, say, as by the government or by the media, because the truth is they're all just different mouthpieces, different fronts for the powers that be. Some might term it the Illuminati. Some may use the term deep state. Some may use the term... there's so many different bloody terms out there. The point is, what you see in England, we'll use England as an example, whether that be Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party, currently Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, yeah. This is all irrelevant. What they say doesn't bloody matter at the end of the day. It does in so much as that is what causes the mass populace to argue and disagree with each other, which is part of the master plan, because it's called social, it's part of what they call social turbulence, which again is something that the likes of the Tavistock Institute have researched, and that is, if you can create a society that is constantly in a state of confusion and disorientation, which is easily done through causing conflict, whether that's through a genuine war or whether that's through a war of words, a war of belief systems, which politics is. Well, my party says this, my party says that. The same thing happens on a lower level with sport, you know.
Right, well, whilst we're on, I'm going to show you something which I thought was interesting. I was looking through, sorry, I didn't mean to be distracted. I was keeping up. As women
show me whatever you want, Caroline.
Oh, okay, right.
Your picture is...
Can you see that advert? This is in the
All I can see is a picture of you that's not even moving at my end.
Oh, no. Right, okay, there is this advert. I'm showing to the audience now. Okay. There is a big advert. Now, am I moving again now?
No.
Oh no. Right.
Not so to me.
Okay, so basically, sorry, I'm going to be rattling a bit, so excuse me.
That's okay.
On the Daily Telegraph, there is a big advert.
Yeah.
On the left-hand side, there is a picture of Boris Johnson, November the 3rd. It says, I can get Brexit wrapped up by Christmas. So Boris Johnson tells us that he plans to get Brexit done by Christmas. Then Chief EU negotiator Michael Barnier says that Brexit negotiations are set to drag on until at least 2022. The Prime Minister assures us that his EU treaty, remember the key word there, treaty, and that's something that will be picked up on in future shows, whether it's with yourself or with other people. So this is an EU treaty, and it says is a great new deal. There is no doubt about it that on the left-hand side, we're pushing forward with this treaty. This treaty has very few differences to May's treaty. May's treaty was so awful, but yet we are now being channeled into another general election, which appears to be us voting effectively on this withdrawal treaty. It's not a second referendum as such, but it's us deciding on a withdrawal treaty. But people don't necessarily know what that withdrawal treaty is all about. On the right-hand side, am I moving yet?
No, not for me.
Oh gosh, that's a shame. On the right hand side, on the other page, so it was a 2-page spread in the Telegraph. It says, we'll extend the Brexit deadline until 2022. EU negotiator Michael Barnier, November the 6th. So it says, vote for a clean breakup to really get Brexit done. And then it's got the Brexit Party. That is in one paper. That's the Telegraph. Now, the Mail. They're having a field day with this general election because we didn't need this general election. We could have just pulled out. We could have just dumped the EU on the 24th of June 2016. But there was never any intention for us to leave. So now we've got the Mail. It says, letter to save Brexit. So we've got the Mail saying the Brexit Party candidates below are standing in key seats. Here's your chance to send them a polite letter urging them to stand down. So, for example, the first person on there is Barnsley Central, Victoria Felton, victoria.felton at thebrexitparty.org. That's the first candidate on this seat list. And everybody has been encouraged to write to these people to say, you are standing in a safe seat, so please step down. Now, so you've got, on the one hand, you've got the Tories not offering to dump the EU, because it's not dissimilar to May. You've got the Brexit Party, who it was engineered to get lots of seats in the European Parliament, because that controls the opposition to the government, because people think that by electing somebody in the European Parliament, that will make a difference. But we had this Groundhog Day situation 5 years ago, where we got UKIP, the maximum seats at the time of 24 seats in the EU Parliament. Now we've got Brexit Party 5 years on with 26 seats. But those seats have actually no value in today's society. They've got no value in today's money whatsoever. So whilst all this is going on in, over here, then over on this side, our government is, all our councils are signed up to the United Nations, and business is going on as usual. So maybe you can give me a take on the neuro-linguistic programming of all what's going on, because as you say, this is all just to cause division, confusion, people falling out with each other on social media, and they're all being played like fiddles. Over to you.
Just making sure I don't suddenly swear then, because I was going to use a swear word. But I mean, at the end of the day, whilst all what you've just said is true and accurate, it's still all complete and utter bull plop. I could have used a different word, because it really doesn't matter one blind bit about that stuff. That stuff you said is the stuff that's visible. The stuff that, all right, not the majority of people on the street aren't looking into it to that depth. But if they wanted to, they could find out quite easily the kind of stuff that you just mentioned. And it's designed that way because politics, and I'm sure I'll upset a lot of people by saying this, because sadly what it means is, if what I'm about to say is true, it means a hell of a lot of people have wasted a hell of a lot of time when they could have been spending their life doing things that are far more positive and beneficial for themselves, their loved ones, and society as a whole. But politics is just a massive con game to distract the general public, the 95% of people that don't fall into the world billionaire, multi-millionaire and trillionaires, the elite 5% of the world that, control 95% of the money and resources and power. And even then, it goes deeper than that, because it's not your people you see at the front, like your Bill Gates there's people far richer than your Bill Gates, far richer than your Richard Bransons, far richer and more powerful even than your George Soroses. And and it's those people that don't get talked about. It's those people that are, if you like, hidden in the shadows, that do control the world's money, that therefore in turn do control the power, that can pull the strings. And these are the kinds of people that will think nothing of getting blackmail material, or as they call it in Germany, compromat, on politicians, on bankers, on people in the media, so that they can then leverage that to get the media to publish stories that are in favour of what they want the nation to be brainwashed into, so that they then can get stuff repressed and kept out of the newspapers when it suits them. Prime example recently is Epstein. Some papers, some media, in fairness, have been quite shockingly brave in terms of bringing up the Prince Andrew link and whatnot, but the majority have just given a cursory mention at best, so that it doesn't raise red flags of why aren't they mentioning it, but then they're just going off and distracting people's attention. Look over here, here's a bigger story, because the media, they're all parts of a jigsaw. The media, the politician, the front people. I'm not saying, by the way, here, I'm not saying that every single MP out there that's trying to get elected for whatever party has a dishonest intent in what they're doing. In truth, I believe the vast majority of people who get involved in the political arena, grassroots level, get in because they think they can make genuine, real changes. And on a small level, they will be allowed to do that, because it's that which gives the public something to argue about and go, oh, look, this party promised this and they did it. Oh, but look, this party promised that and didn't. That is where they can keep the confusion and the division going on. But at a higher level, things that matter, not to us, they do matter to us more than anything as human beings, whether we keep control of our NHS, whether, people should suddenly have to have the pension age raised to 75 when they've been paying into the system all their life. All these things do affect the mass populace, but they couldn't care less, the people at the top, the money people. If they can get you, the worker ant on the street, working longer, that means they don't have to start paying out of the system till later. They can make more money out of your money that you paid into the system.
Well, actually, let me just interrupt you there, because somebody showed me a program that was produced by Dispatches, which is a mainstream program, relatively, certainly on mainstream channels, and it was produced in 2011. Now, it analysed the impact of a certain country's financial input into the UK. And I won't mention the country at the moment, because you have to guess the country. I said to you that in 2011, it was estimated that at least 80% of the Tory MPs were funded or connected somehow to this particular country, which isn't the UK. And so therefore they had a far disproportionate influence in the UK, since obviously their affinity isn't to the UK. Then I think you're guessing which country I'm talking about. This was set out on mainstream media. I know for sure that I stood for, as a member of the European Parliament, I was going through the assessment process in 2013. But then somebody came along and then they said, oh, that person's put some money in. And he obviously was affiliated to that country. So you can see that people on the ground, grassroots people like myself, who haven't got the money to fund themselves, to put extra money in,
Yeah.
can never achieve what we should be by our birthright, because we have been here generations, whereas another country has got an undue influence in our parliament, to the extent that even in 2011, under David Cameron, at least 80% of the MPs had that link with that other country. So how are we going to ever be sovereign if we have a parliament made up of people from effectively another country?
You know, the only way, it's never, as long as there is the kind of, I know there's more than two parties, but, you know, it gets talked about the
It's one
two-party system.
It's the puppets.
Yeah,
party.
exactly.
The puppets party.
Yeah. As long as it is as it is now, the truth is there is absolutely nothing people at the grassroots level will be able to do long term, because, as you say, other people will get funded from other countries, or those with power that it doesn't suit their agenda. For example, for Joe Blogs to be able to do something that would help more people, they'll just come along and they will use gets termed as a nice term with things like Tavistock, social engineering, but they will socially engineer situations in that person's life so that they innocently bump into certain people and innocently become friends, and then innocently get implicated by photographs and a situation or something that can be used against them as blackmail material on the basis of, do what we say, otherwise this comes out and ruins your life. So, you know, even if they were able to raise the funds to push the campaign forward on an equal footing, other techniques would be used if the powers that be behind the scenes wanted to. And the only way of really making a dent in that is for the mass populace to wake up to such. Sadly, it's not going to happen. What I'm about to say, I know, it's a ridiculous thought.
Oh, don't be defeatist.
It's not being defeatist, but it's a ridiculous thought to think that by the 12th of
12th of December, that people will stop voting.
If nobody went out, if nobody at all voted, not a single person, but that's the trouble. The moment a few did here and there, it totally screw it up, unfortunately. But the moment nobody voted at all,
they get the message, wouldn't they?
It would certainly make things a lot more interesting. Unfortunately, we know that's not going to happen because the politicians themselves are allowed to vote. So unfortunately, there would be some votes take place.
You know, what's really amazes me is that when people listen to these interviews and say, yep, you're right, you're right, you're right. And then the next day on Facebook, they say, oh, great, Amber Rudd's resigned, Justin Greening's resigned, and Chucker's resigning, and he's swatched to a different party. And it's like, so what does it matter? You know, it's like they have listened, it's gone in one ear, and then it's gone out the other. I mean, I talk to people who believe in common law. Yeah. And then they're out there actively supporting Brexit Party. And I said, but hang on, if you believe in our constitution, you should be promoting our constitution. You should be decoupling out of the matrix and getting away from all this. And it's like, duh, I haven't thought about that. And it's like, well, why are you focusing on, you know, this is where you came from. You were talking about the constitution, no loss, no harm, no injury. And then you're wasting your time with the corrupt ballot box. Remember, all these political parties, in any event, it's not direct democracy. They're saying, right, for example, this is our manifesto. Do you agree to it or don't you? And then they say, but if you go to this party, it will be this manifesto. So which do you want? This is what they're saying. Which do you want? Well, hang on, I want a bit from here and I want a bit from there, and things will change as time progresses by new things like 5G rollout, 6G rollout, but yet they are being forced to choose this or this. And you know, the thing is, these political parties, they're not in charge of this manifesto anyway. And no matter how many years, how many general elections, a lot of the people say, oh, look at the manifesto, we'll go for this. But hang on, the last government didn't adhere to the manifesto they produced before. So why do you think it's going to change this time?
Well, exactly. That's the thing. It's not in that regard. It won't. My advice to anyone who is going to vote in the general election, and given the short time of space there is between now and voting, I would actually say the more people that vote, the better. It's more realistic actually getting a noticeable message out there if people do vote, firstly. But yes, you've got to look at the propaganda document that they call the manifesto, and bear in mind that some things they will do, obviously, if they got in. Some they will, because they've got to have some so they can turn around and go, we did do that and we did it really quick. But obviously then there's loads of stuff that just doesn't get done because other things come up and they find excuses and distractions and other things to focus on. So what you've got to ask yourself is, who, and I'm not going to mention names because this isn't about names, this is everyone's personal soul searching. But if you do this, it'll help you overcome the emotional manipulation that is being used through social media. Unfortunately, in that regards, Twitter have now banned political advertising, but Facebook haven't yet, and other platforms. You've got to ask yourself deep down, what is it you would ideally like to see happen after this general election? And you've got to ask yourself, looking at what are the messages that people are saying they're going to do, two things. Number one, what is that person's track record of reliability and honesty?
Yeah.
So, and you can independently verify, look, how often has what they've said they were going to do during the course of their political career been what they've stood by and tried, not either managed to make happen or have tried everything they possibly could to make it happen. Some of them may have been defeated, but if there's enough evidence there of them actually saying, I'm going to try and get this to happen, and they really have tried to make it happen, even when there's been backlash from other parties or from sections of the media trying to discredit them. If they've actually made an effort to do what they were saying they would, then that shows integrity within that person and shows them being slightly more reliable than perhaps the person who can regularly be shown to say X, Y, and Z will happen, and then it bloody doesn't.
Well, so you've got Boris Johnson, right? There's been an article written about him that said that he'd lied in court.
Well, he has, with vote leave, hasn't he?
He lied in court about some advertising on the transport, London transport in 2014, apparently. And this was reported. So, right. So we've got somebody in charge of our country who has been found to lie in court.
Yeah.
Who's found to forget about expenses money. That he's failed to declare in Parliament. He is a self-confessed Zionist, which means basically, and he's actually as a Talmudic Jew, he's not allowed to stand in our Parliament under our Constitution. So, and also being a Zionist, his affinity isn't to the UK Parliament. So you've got all these, and yet everybody's saying, "Oh, well, we've got to vote for him because we're not going to get Brexit anyway." But we didn't. We said that this is exactly May's deal, pretty much, and she had it turned down in Parliament 3 times. But the people are being whipped up into such a state, and now, I mean, it's truly incredible, because what is really happening is the fact that we've got the Grenfell Towers situation. Now that's been a whitewash, just like all the other sort of situations like it. Somebody sent me an article from 2012, and thanks to Anne. If you're watching, Anne K, that's the start of your surname. Anne, thanks for sending this article through. about the fire brigades in London were sold for £2 to an investment company in 2012. Now, of course, it's written in the papers after the deal has been done. So this is where you've got your silent weapons for quiet wars, or
and it's written, but it's also written small in comparison to other stories that run the same day that are written in such a way to capture the mass populace's attention, so that they can honestly down the line go, well, it was reported by the media, but the thing is, this other story, this breaking news, which will have been manufactured to occur at the same time, is what everyone ends up talking about. So they end up ignoring or not being aware of the freedoms that are being taken away, or their rights that are being signed off, or in this case, the services that are being sold off. And again, when it comes to voting, you really need to do some research. You know, they keep saying, in the past couple of days, I've seen Conservative Party representatives go, why is it that Jeremy Corbyn keeps saying about, you know, under Labour, we'll make sure the NHS remains in England, when the, you know, Conservatives have been in charge for this long, and we've never, you know, we've still got control of it. Well, that's neurolinguistic programming twaddle speak, because having control of something means you can influence and steer it, but it doesn't mean you own it in its entirety. And you've only got to type in, for example, NHS trusts, Richard Branson, legal action, and you can see that, you know, recently Richard Branson ended up taking legal action against NHS Trust, the NHS, for them not giving him the deal that he was under the impression he was going to get. The point is, if you start doing research and looking, unfortunately, if things remain as they are right now, then, you know, if people continue to vote in a brainwashed manner, if they get scared by the fear that's out there, you know, this idea that, oh, the Labour Party are promising all this, but how could they possibly afford it? Well, they could afford it by charging more taxes and doing the things they're on about. But then people go, no, you'll be way worse off. Well, actually, only a small percentage of the population will be worse off. And that because the majority of people earn less than £86,000 a year. The vast majority of people do. You know, and they're using that as a scare tactic. But the truth is, the majority of people would be better off. And I'm not saying vote Labour. Everyone has to make their own decisions. But if things went to plan, the majority of people would be better off under Labour. But those elites, the powerful people, would be absolutely stung initially, it would appear. But that is why they would immediately shift their companies out of England, for example, and get to places, the so-called tax havens. But again, then we get into the whole bloody EU controversy, because there's talk of the fact that the EU were going to bring in this tax haven law for the richest people to avoid them avoiding paying taxes. And the suggestions that that is what leaving Brexit was all about. You know, it's all about creating confusion again, because there's a logical argument that, of course, they'd want to get out if the EU were going to bring in laws that meant that the rich people would pay more taxes. But by the same token, there's a very logical, reasoned argument that they don't want to leave, and it's just an illusion at the front, because when you look deep, we never got asked whether we wanted to join in the first place, did we?
Well, it goes against our constitution, the Bill of Rights of 1689, which says, no, we should never be controlled by any foreign prince, prelate or power. So you've got all these politicians in whatever party, and they've either got shares in healthcare, they've got their landowners and make lots of money from green energy, which is, you know, EU is part of the issue, but then there's the global agenda anyway, the UN Agenda 2030. You've got our government who've been going out and trying to sign up secure deals and they've been trying to sell our food. So we produce 50% of our food, and yet they want to sell part of the 50% we produce to the Far East, for example. So are you saying, is Boris Johnson saying, and Liam Fox, etc., is that a good deal? The fact that we produce 50% of our food and you want to sell the 50% we've got? Because I tell you something, Jonathan, I mean, I know we all overeat on occasions, but I don't want to see half my intake on a regular basis. I like my food. I'm sure most people do. But to actually cut our intake by 50% or below, if we had to become self-sufficient, most people have no gardens these days.
Yeah, but it's been designed. It's designed that way again. Agenda 2030, which you mentioned, which also ties in with Agenda 21. If people want to independently research this, it's the global plan for a one world government, one world army, and more importantly, for depopulation of the planet by millions and millions of people to get it down to roughly 500 million. And the wonderful thing is for the powers that be that they're not only are they manipulating the media to brainwash the public, and you go, well, no, that couldn't happen, could it? Well, yeah, years ago, for example, they said thalidomide as a drug was safe. We now know different, okay? And people have been held accountable. But for ages, they said it was perfectly okay. For many years, they said tobacco was fine and had no side effects. For many years, they said the same about alcohol. When it interests people, the powers that be manipulate things so that things can seem to be safe. The same with some vaccines, for example. And the reason I say some is because my independent research indicates that not all vaccines are bad. That's why I say people must do their own independent research. I
was at church last week, and my pastor, who's our age, he basically said he'd had the flu jab, and he felt absolutely terrible. He's never felt so ill in decades of years. So one has to, but that's his take on it. And yet that sort of information, we're not allowed to share that with people. That's not what we're supposed to do anyway. We're supposed to believe everything. And it is very difficult because, vaccines are very intrusive. And if you are given a wrong vaccine that does cause an allergic reaction within you, who do you go to then? The people who've just put that vaccine inside your body.
The unfortunate bigger picture here, and this is something that I cover in my documentary, Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis, which is, full details are on my website, magicalguru.com. Is that?
Could you just explain when have you actually launched that film yet?
Yeah, it's available on Vimeo on demand, Amazon Prime Video on demand. If you go on Amazon, you can buy the physical DVD. Yep, it's out there. It's been out for the past 3.5, just under 4 weeks. And in that documentary, which is just under an hour and 50 minutes long, we look at religion, politics, the healthcare system, the legal system, and how it's all controlled by the powers that be to manipulate through emotions and through causing this divide of opinions and conflict in the mass populace to distract people from fulfilling their full potential, to make them subservient and have to look up at perceived authority figures as though the authority figures got their best interest at heart, which they haven't. They're just doing what the powers that be above want, and how those powers that be are profiting from killing off the population. 5G is dangerous. The proof is out there. We have an expert, Dr. Robin Kelly, a medical GP from Britain who's now living in New Zealand. He's in the documentary. I interview him, and he goes into the medical evidence that 5G is not just like an upgraded version of 4G that's quicker. It's a totally different, it's millimeter waves. And this is stuff that's been used on the battlefield as a targeted energy weapon.
Sorry to interrupt. You're talking about senior ladies in years gone by. Do you remember when they used to have the curlers?
Mm-hmm.
And they used to have a hairnet to keep the curlers in?
Yeah.
Yeah? Well, they did up north anyway.
No,
it's like that's what I see it as, an electromagnetic frequency hairnet.
Yeah, that's kind of a good metaphor way of saying it. The thing is with the millimeter waves, even your own human skin, your skin, which is the biggest organ on your body, is a conductor for 5G if you're near a transmitter for it. One of the reasons why I recommend that people do not consent to having a smart meter in their home. And if you have got a smart meter, believe it or not, if you go and look online and type in how can I get my smart meter removed, you are legally, currently at the moment at least anyway, within your rights to get it removed. They sell it as the benefit of you'll be part of the Internet of Things, so that your smartphone will connect to your smart meter, it'll save you money and it'll make communication faster. What they don't tell you is that these things are provably causing more cancers to people who are nearer to the receptors and more illnesses, and that it is part of Agenda 2030, Agenda 21 to kill off millions of people around the world, or at least to make their lifespan shorter. And at the same time, you end up paying for the privilege of it, because although it apparently saves you money, your smart meter, once you get your 5G, that's obviously a bit dearer than your 4G was. And then, that's the technology side, but then they'll tell you, oh, avoid these foods. These foods are better for you. And you get brainwashed through the media and TV shows that it's better to have this allegedly organic stuff. And I'm saying allegedly organic because the only way you can know something's truly organic is if you grow it yourself. But they're trying to stop people from doing that, because there's now places in the world where if you put a tin can out or a bucket to catch rainwater, you can get sued and legal action taken against you for theft.
What?
Because it's owned by, there's places, just let me, I know this sounds ridiculous.
Is that happening in Canada or Mexico? Aren't they trying to sell the water? They take the water from Canada down to Mexico.
Some states in America, it's illegal to collect rainwater.
There you go.
Right? Search Google for it, you'll see the states. They're trying to bring this in worldwide. In the same way, if somebody is growing a seed in their garden, and nature being what it is, that might blow into your garden or get moved by a bird or an insect. If it grows in your garden, you're not allowed to eat the produce of it. In many states, it's illegal because it's theft. They're trying to bring it in, and also they've copyrighted these genetically modified foods supposed to be better for you. They say, well, it's so that they can copyright the seeds, so that if you try growing it yourself, you're committing copyright theft. You're committing an illegal action. So they can take action against you, so that they can control the population even more, and then therefore it also makes it easier for them to work in, say, a strain of something that will break down your immune system to make you more likely to catch other illnesses.
Well, that reminds me, actually, because about 4 years ago, the EU were passing a law, and it was about the types of plants and seeds that could be sold from garden centres, for example. Yeah. So it's all about control.
Yeah, and the bigger picture. How can they benefit? Well, they benefit through selling it you in the first place, having controls of the industry and how those industries are allowed to do things, or what laws they bring in to stop the man on the street from being able to do cottage industry versions, so they can retain more power and more money. But also then through having that control, that means that it's easier for them to hide nefarious things. So, who are the real shareholders at the top? That if you knew might give you a clue to what their real intent was, and their links to things like Agenda 2030, Agenda 21, and their intent to kill off millions of people. What they call Planned Parenthood. Look into that. Do your own independent research.
What's it? 7.5 million babies, unborn babies, apparently have been killed through that.
Yeah, it's just a plan to control the population. It's billed in a way, we're helping the world and helping. No. Well, they sell it to you, so it pushes emotional buttons of that creates a false illusion of logic in your mind that this is better for society. But when you look deeper, in actual fact, no. That's what they want you to be occupied with consciously, so you don't see the bigger picture of what they're really up to.
Jonathan, we have been on for the best part of an hour, and I just can't believe that the time has just whizzed by.
It has, yeah.
Would you come back, please, and let's pick up on some of these issues?
I'd love to, Caroline. Yeah, by all means. Yeah.
I'd like to say, is there anything you'd like to say to the audience before we sign off?
Yeah, 3 things. Number 1, don't believe a single word I've said, and don't believe a single word Caroline says. When you look at Caroline's YouTube channel or my YouTube channel, don't immediately agree with it, but also consequently don't immediately disagree with it. Don't let your preconceived ideas get in the way. Do some independent research from different sources, not just mainstream, but also alternative, and look at the two. Are there commonalities between the messages? Quite often the clue is there. If there's some commonality somewhere, that will give you the clue at what to investigate even further, which element. The things that don't relate, quite often are giving you a clue where not to look. So look at the bigger picture. Secondly, don't assume that because an authority figure says they've got your best interest at heart, even if they can back that up with apparent evidence of, look, I've done this, and this is to help you. Be naturally suspicious. Why, when they're already in a position of power, would they want to help you, who's got far less money, far less power, and can't really do anything to help them? What's in it for them? Human beings only do things when there's a benefit for them. It's sad.
Generally speaking.
But even when people do things altruistically, they're still doing it from a selfish perspective. They may not admit it, of feeling good about having done something for other people. So that human instinct's there. It's just that the people with money and power, it's twisted to such a level that they benefit not just through the money and power, they benefit through a feeling of control and manipulation because they know the bigger picture. Well, the final third thing I'd say is, in that regard, tap in magicalguru.com into your browser. When you get to my website, magicalguru.com, click on where it says Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis. Have a look at the details of the documentary that I mentioned earlier. But there's also links there to a load of free videos, just like Caroline, who's got some amazing, eye-opening, thought-provoking and educational videos on a YouTube channel. You'll see that I've also got some up there that are also free, that go into the subject matters we've scraped the surface of today, that can set you thinking as well. But whatever they make you think, make any decision you make yourself be one that feels right in your gut and in your heart, because your logical thought can be manipulated through emotions, propaganda and lies that appear real through the media. That is why there's times in life where people go, you know what, I believe that what I read there, or I believe that person, but down the line it turned out not to be true. And yet they look back and they go, but my gut instinct, or the feeling in my heart, told me at the time something wasn't quite right. Start to trust in your inner gut feeling. Start to let your heart rule your head rather than your head ruling your heart.
I would say as well, there's a big key message as well. Follow the money.
Yeah, yeah, without a doubt.
Somebody posted a video for a well-known campaigner, and I said, I wonder who funds her. Mm-hmm. And they said, what does it matter? And I said, but it does matter, because it's like whoever you work for, if you work for somebody, you do the master's bidding. Otherwise, they stop paying you. They stop sponsoring you on a regular basis, whatever, or benefits in some way. Follow the money. What does that person get out of what they're doing? Which sort of links in with point number 2 that you mentioned. Jonathan, you've been a star. I hope to be able to interview you again very shortly. We'll discuss this off air. And I'd like to say thank you to everybody for watching and listening. I've been live on Facebook this afternoon, and this video footage will be uploaded to my YouTube channel, Caroline Stevens Seeking the Truth, because it has got a political element, and People know me essentially from a political background. So this won't be going on the Caroline Chit Chat YouTube channel, but will be going on Caroline Stevens Seeking the Truth. Jonathan, finally, perhaps we can cover a little bit more on the MK Ultra neuro-linguistic programming side of things and Tavistock Institute, and perhaps election campaigning next time we meet.
Indeed, it would be my pleasure. Politics is ultimately just about giving people on the street an illusion of choice. They feel like, and that's the key, feel like they've got some sense of say or control in the matter. The truth is they haven't, because these very, very powerful people know how to manipulate, distort and brainwash, and that's happening from all different channels. So yeah,
absolutely. And remember, the newspapers, they are manipulating you 110%. I don't know, can you see this now, Jonathan?
No.
Oh no.
Well, anyway, I will be able to when I go on Facebook in a minute, and I'll be able to watch the replay.
You will, and then once you can stand back and watch what is really happening, and being able to interpret what the powers that be want from you, that you are part of the matrix, but there are ways and means of extricating ourselves from that. So Jonathan, thank you so much, and perhaps you can explain how people can be hypnotized in our next show as well, because that's another thing that somebody asked me to cover with you, and and the type of people that it applies to. So it might not work with me. So thank you, Jonathan. Goodbye to everybody. I could talk to you all day, Jonathan. See you again soon. Goodbye for now.